Thank you very much for the nice introduction and the invite. It's a pleasure to be here. You all might have noticed that the German economy has lost much of its former luster recently. Warnings and sometimes outright alarmist reports are appearing more and more frequently. Germany is said to be on the path to ruin. The country is described as the sick man of Europe, and is supposedly approaching the status of a developing country or even following the path of the GDR. In his latest book, journalist Gabor Steingart argues that Germany is facing a total system collapse. And the best-selling book since 1945 is titled "Germany is Abolishing Itself." Overall, there are more prophets of an impending apocalypse than optimists. Where does this pessimism come from? The last 3 years have been marked by mild recessions, and in the last year, 1925, we saw a very, very low growth. And it's safe to say that the German economy has stagnated since 2023. So last year, for example, 124 jobs in the industrial sector were lost. A survey revealed that about 1/3 of large industrial companies have already relocated some of their research and development activities abroad or are on the verge of doing so. You don't have to look far to find symbols of this supposed decline. Well, just take a ride on Deutsche Bahn, for example, or observe the crumbling infrastructure everywhere you go. Major projects like the Berlin airport or Stuttgart station are monuments to failure. And recently, the Technical University of Berlin had to close its main building for safety reasons. I mean, this is a university that trains architects, by the way. So, it's very embarrassing. The country's traditional strength in exports seems to be waning. The figure for 2025 was lower than that for 2022. So you see here 3 years of stagnation, or if you look at it in real terms, of decline. Once the pride of Germany's economy, the automotive industry, is now facing tough times. Its sales and profits are falling sharply. So there is reason for pessimism, but such judgments are often based on short-term perspectives. As an economic historian, I prefer to analyze long-term trends. And let's look at the export values again. So it's not only the last 4 years, but it's since the 90s. And you see that the nominal terms in billions of euros tell a very different story. We see that there's a long record of success. And apart from the years of the financial crisis and the year of the COVID pandemic, the trend has been rather steady upward. And we are now at a kind of plateau, and it's not quite clear whether this is just a pause or whether the momentum in export has truly come to an end. But my argument is that when you look at it at the long term, it's not so bad. It's not bad at all. Similar thing when you look at sales of German cars. In the long term, there were fantastic increases in revenue, especially in the early 2020s. And then we have, in the recent years, we have this decline, but we are still way above the levels of the 2010s and before. So we are complaining at a very high on a very high level. Car sales are still doing very well, but they are slightly declining. So what you can see from this graph is the importance of foreign markets. They are more than twice as important as a domestic market for car sales. So Germany is deeply integrated into the global economy and highly dependent on exports. Let's step back from the automotive industry and look at the economy as a whole. This is the share of exports in total GDP. And again, we see a slight decline in the recent years, and media really moan about this and say, oh, this is really, really bad. But it is really clear when you look at the long perspective that we can look back on decades of outstanding export success, and that we are currently well above the long-term average. So we are still in an excellent position, which is often forgotten in public discourse. I'd like to point to another phenomenon, namely population change. Contrary to popular belief, Germany has been, in the years that I'm talking about, an open country, taking in large numbers of migrants. Although more people died than they were born, the population increased by 3.4 million between 1991 and 2020. And this surplus was solely due to migration. The net migration gain in these 30 years was 8.9 million people. So this significant immigration not only prevented the decline of the population, but also mitigated its aging, which is, after all, one of the biggest problems Germany is facing right now. Look at this graph. In 2024, there were 25 million people with a migration background living in Germany. They were accounting for 30.4% of the total population. So this is the green part of the circle, and about half of them had German citizenships, while the others held foreign passports. So this is an amazing figure, and really, tells us a lot about the interaction with the rest of the world. In 2005, the so-called German job miracle began. By 2019, not only had the number of unemployed fallen by more than half, from 4.99 to 2.3 million, but the number of people employed had risen by an astonishing 5.6 million. And this, again, is largely due to immigration. It is also worth noting that the number of immigrant entrepreneurs in Germany has been steadily increasing. Various legal changes, mainly in the 90s, made it easier for them to start their own businesses. By 2012, 1 in 6 business people in Germany had foreign roots. In 2019, the number of self-employed immigrants stood at 701,000. And when you look at the self-employment rate, was higher with people who had a migration background than compared to people without migration backgrounds. So there's a positive side, an asset that is very often forgotten when we talk about migration. When we see that there's a lot of problems, and it makes no sense denying them. But there's also a very strong positive side. In general, global interdependence increased across a wide range of areas. And let us return to some macroeconomic indicators. Here we have the stock of German direct investment abroad, and you can really see how it has risen over the last decades. Just to clarify, these are stock figures, so aggregates, not annual flows. So that's what adds up. Direct investments includes equity capital and intragroup loans flowing into Germany from flowing abroad, out of Germany. And between 2010 and 2024, the cumulative total rose by nearly 1.7 trillion. So this marked a continuation of the momentum seen already in the 2010s. This chart shows annual inflows and outflows, so it's a very different method. The red line represents annual inflows into Germany. So we see relatively high inflows here up through 2020. Every year, a great deal of foreign capital arrived in Germany. The outflows are shown in the blue curve above. And below, you have in the green columns, you see the net balances. In almost every year, more capital flowed out of Germany than came in. And the gap widened significantly after 2020. How should we interpret this? Is this yet another sign of decline? I would be a bit more cautious about that. Some of the direct investments abroad actually strengthened the German economy. So, for example, when a German company establishes a branch in a low-wage country, this creates benefits that may secure jobs in Germany by reducing the company's average wage costs. If, on the other hand, a company closes all its German production facilities and relocates them abroad, the situation is different. The jobs are gone, although the profits will, in most cases, flow back to Germany. I would therefore not interpret this chart one-sidedly as evidence of failure, but rather emphasize Germany's integration into the global economy. The fact that the deficits have widened in recent years is, however, somewhat distressing. Even though Germany remains attractive to many international investors, its appeal has evidently been declining for several years. Why is this? There are several reasons for this. And you all, when you read the papers, it's a current discussion. The taxes are high, as are the energy prices. Bureaucratic processes are very lengthy. If you want to have a building permit, you might have to wait for a year or more. The labor market is inflexible and the bureaucracy is excessive. Added to this are labor costs, which are higher than the average in many other industrial countries. This is not only due to wage levels, but also to non-wage labor costs resulting from high social security contributions. And here's a concept of unit labor costs, quite helpful. It reflects the total expenses required to produce 1 unit of output. So this indicator takes into account wages, social contributions, and productivity. This table contains data for the manufacturing sector in 2024. Germany is indexed with 100, and all the countries that are below Germany, they have lower unit labor costs. So you see, in terms of competitiveness, this is quite a massive problem. So how should we respond to this? First of all, we must increase productivity. Second, we must be careful with wage rises. And third, we must reduce non-wage labor costs. The last point is very topical, and politicians deal with this maybe at this hour, not too far away from here, because this comes down to a reform of the German welfare state. And there's no doubt that the welfare state is extremely overstretched and cannot be sustained in its current form. If it is not reformed, social security contributions and thus non-wage labor costs would continue to rise massively, which would be truly dangerous and further weaken Germany's competitiveness and attractiveness for investments. However, this is not the only challenge the country faces. Other challenges arise at the international level, which is of immense importance, precisely because Germany's intense integration into the global economy. Since 1990, Germany has been based on, among others, Germany's prosperity, has been based, among others, on 4 pillars. And first, cheap energy from Russia. This connects with Frank's talk. You saw the pipeline in the one picture. Although Russia's aggressive stance had been evident since at least 2014, the German government had entrusted more than half of Germany's gas supplies to Russia, and even planned to significantly increase the dependence with the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, whose construction started in 2018 but was never put into operation. Second point, Germany has largely outsourced its military security to the United States, acting as a kind of free rider, one might say. And this is for too long. Germany has clung to the illusion of the end of history, which meant that, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, democracy and market economy and peace had triumphed once and for all. This was the great illusion, not only in Germany, I must say. An era of disarmament was dawning, and this era would yield a substantial peace dividend. And Germany really loved that and relied on this illusion too long, reduced its military spending, and so on. Third, there was a firm belief that the Chinese market had virtually unlimited capacity to absorb German products. Indeed, Germany experienced an unprecedented export boom in China, but it was obvious that this would not last forever because China was industrializing its own country. But this fact that you could really see was not really factored into strategic planning. And fourth, Germany had benefited from the liberalization of world trade more than any other country. For many decades, the stable framework of the Washington Consensus under US leadership served as the driving force behind globalization. Its central elements were deregulation, free trade, the reduction of government subsidies, and trade barriers. While the Uruguay round of multinational world trade negotiations that ended in 1994 still yielded substantial progress in liberalization, the next round, the Doha round, which ultimately failed in 2017, did not. Negotiation on a transatlantic trade and investment partnership, TTIP, between the EU and the US also failed in 2016. The previously dynamic rise in the trade openness index, this is when you add imports and exports and put them in relation to the global GDP, and this index was rising from 1970 to 2009, and this rise came to an abrupt halt with the financial crisis. Instead, there was a slight multi-year decline for the first time through 2019, before the COVID pandemic marked another low point. And it was not until 2022 that the index stood just slightly above the 2008 level. However, one can really say the momentum had been lost. By 2016, at the latest, with Donald Trump's first election and the Brexit vote, an explicit preference for a path towards trade isolation had taken hold. The disrupted supply chains during COVID subsequently illustrated the vulnerability of the global economy, and Germany's unilateral reliance on natural gas supplies from its Russian adversary exacerbated the shock. This experience weakened the free trade paradigm and shifted the focus to securing supplies and energy security. The scenario that the US will finally abandon its role assumed since 1945 as a spearhead of a liberal rules-based world trade order and replace it with a protectionist system of high tariffs and national self-interest no longer in these days seems unrealistic. All four of these key pillars of Germany's economic strength have become fragile. Germany must therefore adapt to fundamentally changed conditions and navigate profound upheavals. So what should be done? Well, as you all know, there's a political party that is partly populist and partly far right. This party is currently on the rise and receives the highest percentages in the poll. I'm talking about the AfD, the strongest party in Germany. And this party deliberately invokes the alarmist doomsday scenario. You can see this in this poster. Chancellor Merz is using a wrecking ball to destroy the German automotive industry. The AfD's platform is headed in a direction that would further accelerating the crumbling of the four pillars. It advocates for Germany's withdrawal from the EU, abandoning the euro, closing the country off from the outside world, ending migration, and even initiating large-scale remigration. This would further weaken Germany's traditional strength and pave the way for economic disaster. There can't be any doubt about that. So, what strategies should the centrist party adopt? First, I would say the exact opposite of what the AfD recommends. Germany should remain an open country and in particular continue to promote European integration. No country has benefited more from it than Germany. Germany needs the influx of people and capital from all over the world. Furthermore, it needs an open exports market. It must organize orderly immigration into the labor market and create attractive conditions for foreign investment. Given that the US is no longer a reliable partner and that Washington is currently leaning towards protectionism, Germany needs to find new trading partners. Fortunately, there are already initiatives in this direction, including treaties with India, the Mercosur countries, as well as with the countries of the Arabian Gulf. At the same time, efforts should be made to revitalize the long-standing and once so fruitful relationship with the US. What seems most important to me right now is getting our house in order. Urgent internal reforms that have been put off far too long must be tackled immediately. And this means modernizing the state, in particular the welfare state. The tax system and the bureaucratic red tape must be streamlined. Digitization and the education system must be brought up to modern standards. Finally, I recommend a more optimistic outlook. Germany is still the third largest economy in the world. We have creative companies whose products are still in demand worldwide. We have a vibrant startup scene, a skilled and motivated workforce, and a vibrant research community. Germany also boasts an exceptionally robust sector of small and medium-sized enterprises with over 1,000 so-called hidden champions, small, highly specialized global market leaders. No other country can match this. However, this does not mean we can be complacent and carry on as before, because the world has changed and the challenges have grown. What matters is responding to them wisely and making better use of existing potentials. Thank you very much.